I feel like I should say that I'm Monique Marvez, even though if you're here, you probably already know that it's me. But we went through a whole thing when we started Talk of Our Times about how to start the show. And it ended up being that my friend Stanton, who we call producer Stanton, built this whole big intro so that he could just say, like, now, and I'd start talking. And I realized that that was actually how it had been my whole life. Like, I landed my first radio gig from being almost virtually homeless, and I really didn't know how radio worked. So I had a partner named Todd Kangas. We'll talk about him in a minute. But Todd would literally just point, and that meant start talking. And then he would go like this, which meant like start slowing down. And then he'd be like, song starting. And it took a lot of years before I understood how radio worked. And then I started doing a podcast. And I really didn't know how that worked. And I started it with producer Tony. And producer Tony would just say, go. And I would do an hour in one take. That's true, right, Tony? He's behind the camera. Say, yeah, okay. It's like a witness. You have to say it out loud for them to hear, for the stenographer to hear. And I would talk for 1 hour straight with no cuts or interruptions. And then he would just post it to ConnectPal. And some of you gave me money to listen to those hours. And I think about sort of the history of communication because it's what I do. It's what I get excited about is just being with you, talking to you. So I thought, like, when did this start? And I couldn't really think of an exact moment when it started. But when I was in fourth grade, my parents, it was the most challenging time of my life to this date. My parents were getting divorced. My dad had just had his first nervous breakdown. He was at Jackson Memorial Hospital receiving shock treatment. And, you know, I went to visit him over the Christmas holiday. I can still remember the dress I wore because it was at that time I thought I was really something. It was red with gold crisscross chains. And I had this little pin with a bell. And I remember it vividly because I always remember what I said. And I always remember what I was wearing. It's something weird about the way I think. So today I thought I want to wear a red dress because it's an important day. And I realized that there's patterns in my life that circle and circle back on each other because life is circular and cumulative. It is not linear and throwaway. So that Christmas when I was incredibly challenged, but there was still Santa Claus and I still wrote a list and I still asked for things. I asked for two things. There was a little boy baby tender love. It was a soft silicone doll that was a little boy in blue shorts. And it was the big brouhaha because he had a tiny little penis in his little blue shorts. It was an authentic baby. It looked just like a baby. And you bathed him and you washed his hair. And I wanted the little boy baby tender love, not because of any salacious reasons, but because I already had the little girl baby tender love. But my mother, being Catholic, was very concerned with me getting a doll with a penis. The second thing I asked for was a typewriter. I asked for a typewriter. What 9-year-old asks for a typewriter? And then is super excited when she gets it. Now you have to understand this is Christmas of 71 going into 72. And there was a lot of talk about ecology. And there was actually an Earth Day program in my elementary school. It was the first Earth Day. Look it up. I think it was 1971 was the first Earth Day. Thereabouts. There was a really cool little poem that I had to memorize because I was the only kid in third grade that they thought could memorize a poem. Here it is. The litter bug drops bits and scraps, paper and peels and bottle caps. We just pretend he does not see the trash can used by you and me. Perhaps what we should really do is throw him in the trash can too. I've never forgotten that. And I wore a red dress on stage when I said it. So my first real foray into public communication besides school plays, which I got picked to be the star in every school play since kindergarten because I could remember the lines, was that typewriter. And I started typing an ecology newsletter to pass out to teach people how to not litter because litter upset me so deeply in second, third, and fourth grade. And I realized that I have a history of things touching me, upsetting me, motivating me, inspiring me. And the first thing I want to do before I even take action is to find out who's with me, who feels the same way that I do, or who needs me to help them feel the same way I do. More importantly, who can I persuade into my cause? So that's where it started. And there were a lot of years where I didn't have the ability to do that because I tried to be a normal person. I tried to, get a regular job or a regular education or whatever. But somehow it would seep out of me like sweat out of a pore. And I always tell people that's what truth does. Truth seeps out of you. You're not tricking anyone when you're not being honest about yourself and what you do and how you do it. And I'm pretty sure you're like me. There's something inside of you that's trying to come out. And maybe in my future forays, I can help you with that. But let me circle back and tell you how it worked for me, because I'm a big fan of not telling you, but showing you. And there's 30 years of film of me being able to show you what I've done as a stand-up, as a talk show radio hostess, as a podcaster, as a person who tried to help you get through COVID. But let me circle back to the years where it wasn't working, because maybe that's where you are now. Okay, so the 70s and 80s, I tried to do everything pretty much that my mom wanted, because I'm pretty sure my dad's the one who imbued me with this desire to communicate, because he saw something in me and nurtured and fostered it, even though he knew it could potentially present challenges for me. And it has 3 divorces, 2 live-in boyfriends, and a string of dead bodies behind me. We'll get into that on future shows. But here's what I want you to know. I want you to know that whatever's inside of you is worthwhile, and it's worth coming out. And it's going to come out anyway. Because in the years that I sold cosmetics, I was behind a counter for years, and I was very, very good at it. You know why? Because I still did this. Like, women would walk up to me in Miami, Dadeland Mall, behind the Estee Lauder counter, and they'd say, "Monique, make me beautiful." And I would say, I ain't got that kind of time, and you don't have that kind of money. But let me see what we can do here. And I'd say, have a seat on my magical stool, and I'll slap some red lipstick on your beak, and we'll take it from there. And I actually had a following of women who knew that I wasn't going to upsell them, that I wasn't going to tell them something that wasn't, that I was going to say, hey, you know what? It's okay you're wrinkled. I'm not going to sell you a $70 cream you're never going to put on your face. You know what I'm going to sell you? I'm going to sell you powder and lipstick, and I'm going to tell you you're beautiful. And you know what? Everything's great when it smells good. So how about some Youth Dew? How about some Alliage? How about some Private Collection? I don't even think those fragrances are in the Estee Lauder lineup anymore. But that's what I would do. And I did that through my first divorce. And then something happened. I don't even know what happened exactly, except I got a fever and I was reading a newspaper. And the next thing I knew, I was open micing. And then I was off to the races. But to circle back, I want to tell you a little bit about getting started. You know how it works? You just do. You just get started. And the only thing you have to do to get started is to stop being afraid that it won't be good. Because I'm going to tell you right now, it won't be good. My newsletter, not good, filled with typos. And I'm not sure that I even knew how to spell litter properly. But it doesn't matter. What I know to be true is that every time you do something, it gets better, and life is cumulative. And in Indianapolis, I did a show called Monique and the Man, as I told you, with the guy Todd Kangas, who would just point at me. And that show wasn't so great. But somehow it led to the $1 Million Morning Show. I won a contest to get a radio show in San Diego. Market 14. I went from 41, Indianapolis, where I didn't know what I was doing, to market 14. Still didn't know what I was doing, and I was getting paid a lot of money. Because it has to do with intention and desire. That's what life is. And I always intend to connect. I always intend to leave you better than I found you. I always intend to make you believe in yourself as much as I very much struggle to believe in myself. Because that's the only way that it works. So here's the history of me communicating with you. So we have first radio show, second radio show. I went from obscurity to getting a book deal with Louise Hay. I wanted to write a book called It's Not Unusual because I love Tom Jones and because I believe that everybody's life to them is normal because it's your only frame of reference. Like when people ask me, they say, Monique, what's it like being a female comedian? Well, guess what? I've never been a male comedian. I don't have an answer. I don't have a good answer anyway. All I know is that your life is filled with incredible eccentricities and peculiarities and fortuitous flukes and wonderful things that you don't think about on a daily basis, that you don't dwell upon. And what you dwell upon grows. So I'm asking you right now, think about the things that went right and not the things that went wrong, because it's a real game changer. So going, into the book deal, it went terribly wrong. I got a book deal with Louise Hay, and I wanted to write It's Not Unusual. And they wanted me to write a book a little bit like, A Comedian's Way to a Happy Life. And I have to thank Louise Hay, rest in peace. I was at her 80th birthday, because the book that they wanted me to write, I couldn't write because I was a comedian and I was on the radio and I was making a lot of money. But I couldn't tell you a guide to a happy life because I wasn't happy. I was in a miserable marriage. I weighed 30 pounds more than I do now. I felt weighed down and responsible for the world. And then, fortuitous fluke, a friend of mine was taking promo pictures for the book. She was a chain smoker, my friend Alban Navizette. She's amazing. Look her up. Alban would light one cigarette with the other cigarette. She's very French. And while she was helping me take these pictures for a book that I have never written, I said, Alban, you're not smoking. What's up? She said, I went to an amazing hypnotherapist. I don't smoke. Well, I thought, if you can be hypnotized out of smoking, I can be hypnotized out of all of the things about me that I don't like. But let's pretend that it's going to be about losing weight. And I went to an amazing woman. Her name is Vaikunta Priya. Look her up. I say these things because I can. Because I tell the truth. Because no one can sue me because I'm telling you good things. In fact, Dr. Priya told me, don't talk about me anymore. I can't take on any more clients thanks to you. But she changed my life. And I'm going to tell you how. She said, if you were exactly the person you want to be, you looked exactly the way you wanted to look, you had the body that you had, that you want to have, what would happen? And I said, and I quote, I'd become a giant whore and my marriage wouldn't survive it. Not necessarily in that order. And she said, no, that's not possible. I said, yes, it is. She said, no, it's not. I've just interviewed you for an hour. You don't have it in you. You're not designed that way. She said, but let's talk about your marriage. And that was the beginning of me ripping up the floorboards of being a people pleaser. And I figured out you can't take the pounds off until you take the weight off. And that was a big, big, big shift. And I started taking the weight off. And then the pounds came off. And then I went faster and faster and faster. And then I got Showtime. And then I got KFI. And then I just kept going and communicating with you. And I thought about the fact that they didn't want me to write It's Not Unusual. And I didn't write, A Comedian's Guide to a Happy Life. But for many years, 1,200 pages worth, I've been writing a book called, it started out being Not Skinny, Not Blonde, but I'm going to circle back and rename it and call it It's Not Unusual. Because that's what I wanted to write. And that's what I'm going to write, because my life is not unusual and neither is yours. It's yours. Make it unusual. It should be unusual. It should be highly unusual. So I'm looking at these titles and I'm looking at all the things over time that I wanted to do that I wasn't allowed to do because the world worked in a certain way. But we've recently had, a lot of things happen. The internet, social media, everything escalating, and then COVID. And then the world shifting. And I started a show called Talk of Our Times. And it was on YouTube. And a lot of you watched it, and a lot of you praised it, and a lot of you gave me an enormous amount of love. Then I wanted to do another show called Inciting Incident. A little play on words. SIGHT, Inciting Incident. Because at the beginning of every movie, there's always an inciting incident. And I feel like COVID was an enormous inciting incident. But I don't want anything I do in the future tied to anything I do in the past. I've done it. We've enjoyed it. You met me through it. I found you so many ways, and you have found me so many ways. So the next thing I'm doing is going to be called Level Up. Because now that we have been through all of these situations together, because whether you knew me or I knew you, it was happening to us. COVID was happening to us. Social media was happening to us. Life was happening to us. The universe seeking balance was happening to us. It's happening, and it's exciting. And I'm going to continue to try to communicate to you all the things that I think can make your life better, or at least help you understand the things that are challenging you. Because I know how it works. The Matrix was a documentary. It wasn't really a movie. If you want something, be source. Give it to someone else. Because the reality is you don't exist. You're just more me. And the more I give you, the more I get, and the better my life gets. And that's just what I believe and what I'll always believe. So when I say, let's do this, what I really mean is, Monique, do this. And when I say, I've got all the love in my heart, for you, what it really means is it's time for me to do what I was meant to do, which is communicate with you in a lot of different places, in a lot of different ways, and use this particular show, moment, outlet as the nexus of everything that I do. So I hope that you'll now look for me, Monique Marvez, on every social media platform, because I use my name, because there's not another one. My dad did me an enormous turn when he gave me the name Monique Marvez, no middle name. I'm the only one on social media. So I hope that you'll look for my comedy. You'll look for my old stuff that we're going to post all over the place to share with you so you can get up to speed. And we're going to start Level Up. We're going to do it together. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually super excited. So I'm going to think of a new close. But until I do, let's use the one that's always worked for me. Love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can.